Hey there, it's Nathan Crane, founder of the Panacea Community and executive producer of Unify Fest, and I'm super happy you're continuing to join us for the second annual Self-Reliance Summit. You know, the summit is really focused on helping you build new skills and learn key insights for living more self-sustained, inspired, and prepared for co-creating this new world of sustainable living. And today I'm really happy to introduce you to our dear friend and colleague, Rachel Morrison. Rachel specializes in internal and global strategies with an emphasis in spirituality, wellness, and sustainability education. She studied international business and marketing and has practiced integrated wellness principles most of her life. Rachel's also a speaker, trainer, and developer of programs of change with Sunrise Ranch and thought leaders from around the world who are dedicated to the awareness and evolution of consciousness by focusing on global development through the self, thriving community, and unified efforts. Rachel, hey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Nathan.
Of course, absolutely. So today we're going to begin by talking about interdependence, specifically in relationship to self-reliance. So you live in a community which is dedicated to sustainability, growing food, spirituality, permaculture, personal skill building, and development, etc. So tell us, what's your experience been like so far in that kind of communal environment?
Yeah, so it's been really amazing. I've been here for about 6 years now, and I'm from LA. So it was a very drastic shift to go from one modality to the next. And one of the things that I would put forward into our space together in this moment would be the awareness of taking time for oneself and being unabashedly willing to share who you authentically are in the world and be innocently curious about how other people express their gifts, their love, their passion, and their truth into the world. Knowing that there will eventually be stumbling blocks on either side or both simultaneously at the same time. And that doesn't really matter. The fact is that the wheels are keeping the motion going, and that by keeping the motion of the wheels going, something actually does get created that is life generating and not life degrading. And with true alignment to the awareness of that ability and of that possibility, the willingness to keep going is that much more apparent in an individual's experience.
So at Sunrise Ranch, which is where you
Hmm.
are, you've been there for
Yeah.
6 years. I've actually visited. It's a very special place.
Thank you.
You get to experience that independent self-expression of yourself, which you're speaking about. And at the same time, you get to experience that in close living community environment with many other people as well.
Hmm.
So, as we're talking about self-reliance, a lot of people think, preparing for the end of the world, head to a bunker in the middle of nowhere and stock up on food and ammunition, which I understand that. There's a lot of fear in this whole thing of systems collapsing and food production collapsing, healthcare systems, governments, etc. I mean, none of that's sustainable at the moment, especially in the United States. But when I think of self-reliance, I think of it more of like developing our own personal skills,
Hmm.
through our own passions and in ways that are in harmony with the planet, and then figuring out how we weave that into a community of people that are working and collaborating and co-creating
Hmm.
together. And so, what are some of those, nuances or some of those life experiences that you've had in that kind of environment that maybe most people who've never lived in a close community have ever had in their life?
So I think one of the things that's coming out in my mind right now is the understanding that to be in communities successfully and to bring all of which you are into the world, that little victimhood person that has either like some mommy, daddy, boss issues needs to grow up. And I have seen in my 6 years here at Sunrise people not willing to come out of that and end up feeling quote unquote victimized by other people, when in reality, I believe that any violence that is experienced by an individual is created by on an internal level from some broken, thing that's inside of them. And I think it's also really important to understand that a point of focus in community, like you're moving toward a singular goal of some sort, whatever that might be for any community in particular, is important, but also the awareness to know that you are indeed a sovereign being on this world sent by the Creator to create, not to take orders. And so, really creating your own world within a community model is I think, really, really important. Most of the positions that I've had here in the community, I've created myself. And it was one of those things where it was like, I'm either going to do this with the community, or I'm going to do this on my off work hours and keep doing it because it's something inside of me that I can't keep in. And so, really knowing what those things are for a person and what they are not compromising in their life really brings a sense of abundance and magic into it, as well as bringing the energy of commitment into it. I found that once you're super committed into being with a collective of people or with an organization or with a single relationship or staying in the same house or working with the same car or working with whatever finances that you have or working to get more and knowing what those commitments are that you want to get, the impossible actually becomes achieved because of the dedication and the way that the mind is able to then reverse engineer how to actually get those things done because of the level of heart and commitment and understanding that you've been able to provide for yourself.
So, would you say that being it, being in community is more important than being 100% self-sustained by yourself in the mountains somewhere in a cave or a bunker or something?
I do, and this is why. I have learned that the first and foremost way to become self reliant is to be able to trust that inner voice inside of yourself. And by really having an intimate experience with it, if you would like to call it spirit, if you'd like to call it the universe, if you'd like to call it your higher self, if you just like to call it your intuition, whatever that thing is for you, when you know it, you feel it, you trust it, and you live it from your heart, first and foremost, and have that orientation upward to that truth, you're able to then see how every person in your life has those words in them, to where you're not building from this self-reliant place of it's just me and my creator or me and my God doing this work, but it's me and my creator, me and my God doing this work. And oh, by the way, it's in you and it's in you and it's in you and it's in you. So now that we're all here and showing up for the party, what is it that we actually want to be doing together to make something that's radically different and completely unrecognizable than anything we've ever known before?
Right. Exciting times, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, and so talking about skill building and self-reliance and having value to bring to a community setting, it's not always necessarily about you know something physical that you have skills with, like build, like in a community, great skill sets to have on a physical level are building sustainable homes or building out of cob or adobe or growing food, permaculture, water systems, food, shelter, water, those kinds of things, right? But then beyond that, we enter into maybe the non-physical, the non-material values and skill sets that somebody can bring to a community in an interdependence. Because we know that I know, I mean, through my experience and through the research that I've done, that for a community to thrive and be successful long term, you have to go beyond just basic survival needs and into a spiritual foundation, a interrelated, community vision, art, music, theater, drama, fun, creativity. Like we're here to create, and we're also here to have fun, right? We're here to laugh and enjoy ourselves. So, in your experience, what are some of those skills that people can bring to the table or cultivate within themselves that could support a community that may not necessarily have to be, food related or house building related, etc.?
Right. Well, without sounding too cliche or an echo from the 60s, I think it really comes down to love, ultimately. And from that understanding of love and community and integrity, um, there's something really special that I've learned and that I've experienced in that setting. And, thinking about it a little bit deeper, I think that there's a conscious naivete that a person should absolutely go into all of this with. And not having just, oh, I'm going to be naive in all of these things, but to really adopt the training of the mind to have a very conscious naivete and optimism when going into situations and learning how to grow that muscle so that when situations do come up, you start up here rather than, oh, something really bad just happened, or I'm going to go into some fear based sort of thinking. But to keep training the mind and keep training your emotional intelligence to hold those things. I recently was watching something on Facebook about what makes lasting relationships. And that's something I'm really into. And one of the things was being able to understand and control your emotional experience. And I think that's really important. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't actually have the luxury of experiencing sometimes. And it really, I believe, comes down to that half second point where you have a choice
Right.
to react to something or to take a breath and pop back up into your into that naive, optimistic, and hopeful, truly hopeful, and truly willing to share in a loving and vulnerable way that shows how exposed you are when talking with a different person so that the real situation and the real conversation can actually be experienced.
Right. So, I mean, what you're really talking about is cultivating inner peace and inner knowing within ourselves and being able to be in more direction or control of our own emotions and our own inner environment, right? I mean, I think the most important thing for all of us is to be able to have a conversation with someone and not get into a fight over politics or religion or what have you. I mean, I love a good debate, but not in an attempt to try to, I am the right one and you're the wrong one, but in an attempt to um, uplift consciousness and understanding in both sides. And I think, especially in a community environment, I don't see anything more important than that, than exactly what you just said, because one of the things I've noticed in communities that have not succeeded, and succeeded just meaning still around after a few years, is that people just get fed up with each other and pissed off and end up leaving and fighting or whatever, right? The drama comes out.
Right.
But if you have tools and solutions and resources to, when those things happen, which they always will, how to diffuse it and transform it and transcend it, then you're going to create that harmony within the community. And maybe you can share some of the tools and resources you use there, or that Sunrise Ranch has. How do you guys deal with some of those situations?
Yeah, I think that you've touched on a really important topic here, Nathan. And what's coming into my thinking right now is Buckminster Fuller. And over here at Sunrise Ranch, he actually helped and constructed our geodesic dome here. It's a 406 person seating geodesic dome venue.
Nice.
And when you're inside of this giant white dome, you see how all the triangles fit together.
Right.
And not one triangle in the dome is holding all the weight, but all the weight of this giant dome is evenly distributed. And I think that's a really important consideration when we consider community and how the longevity of it can actually be accomplished. And by not blaming, by not putting everything on one person, by being willing to do not just your part 100%, but if there's something happening over here at Sunrise, we have about 10,000 visitors a year between the Arise Festival and our normal spiritual retreat and conference business.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have the gals in guest services or in our dining room or in housekeeping get a lot of more work than they themselves could actually pull off in the amount of time that's been allotted between different events or groups coming, what have you. And being willing to just roll up your sleeves and go arm in arm with your friends that you love and that you care about, and not say that's her job, I work in an office, or that's her job, I worked in the farm all day. Like, that's not the way it works. Sunrise Ranch is actually one of the oldest intentional communities in the country. It was established in 1945. And I believe part of its success is that willingness, that pioneering spirit to go beyond what one's comfort zone would be, what they think that their responsibilities are, and to strip away any assumptions of entitlement or arrogance, and truly come from a place of we are very serious about bringing the idea of heaven on earth and having that be experienced. And from that, when angels are working together, that changes the tone than a bunch of people out in a commune somewhere, muscling around in the dirt. Because that's certainly not the case. And as you've testified, it certainly doesn't feel or look like that. I really believe that people feel something different when they come into a space of that type of work being done, that type of consideration being had. And it can be in a community, it can be in someone's home, it can be in somebody's office space, and knowing the level of agreement that people have together and seeing how that level of agreement can ripple out into the material world, I think is a really fascinating experience to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just reminded of when I came to visit last year that on a practical level, some of the things that you do there that I think help build that cohesion between people living together are, like you have a service, right? And it's
Yep.
a non-denominational, spiritual based service. So it's not any one religion is right or wrong. It's, people sharing from their heart about spiritual connection to a higher source, and having that service ongoing. And then what I participated in was a like a chanting in a singing chanting in a temple, which was actually really really cool. And then right afterwards we went to the geodesic dome, and there was everyone sat in a circle and shared their thoughts and feedback and feelings about the service that had happened, I think the day before, right? Or earlier that morning, something like
Earlier
that.
that
Earlier
morning.
that morning, and it was just an open circle to listen and to share, to listen and share. So some of those things, I mean, in a very practical level, um, to me, are symbols of unifying, of listening, of opening our hearts, of collaborating and co-creating. it's drastically different than what we're used to in this society that we've created, which is only very short term uh, in the longer span of things, where we always used to live in close, tight, small communities, and now we live in, apartments with hundreds or thousands of people, and nobody even knows their neighbors. And everyone wakes up at different times, goes to work, goes home, shuts the door, watches TV, and goes to bed. It's like very few, not everybody, I'm generalizing, but very
Yeah.
few people, even though they're living 10 feet away from each other, even know each other's names. Like what we just did, my birthday was, just had a birthday, and
Like yesterday, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
we had some friends, but we also invited some neighbors and some new people over just to
Yeah.
meet and come and join us, have dinner, let's meet, let's talk. And it was wonderful. So it's like things you can do to get to know your neighbors
Mhm.
and find out, the skills they have, the qualities they bring to life, and then you find out, a lot of different ways you can support each other. So I mean, just on a practical level, if you're not living in an intentional community, you can start creating small, community within just the neighbors around you, right? Which I think is really special. But then that, those kinds of things that you do to participate together, where you're listening and sharing together. I remember in that circle there was somebody that like was upset about the way people were sharing, and he shared that. And it was like, okay, that's fine. No judging that person. It's like
Yeah.
he's upset about, for some reason, I don't remember the reason, but
It
I
was
was just
because there was a lot of fast, like
uh,
someone would finish and then someone else would go and someone else would go and someone else would go and not let the energy build and then let.
so something as simple as that is a way that you want things done and people aren't doing it is going to create some tension, right? But at the same time, it's like, how do you deal with that? Well, you deal with it without, you know, by dealing with here first, and dealing with here
Exactly.
first, and dealing with our emotional bodies first. Because if something is triggering you and making you react that way, it's because there's something inside of you that is uncomfortable, that hasn't been resolved yet, that is not in harmony with peace and with spirit and with unity. And so that's where, back to what you were talking about, is working on our inner selves, first and foremost.
Absolutely, most certainly. I'm learning a lot about how the only demons that one needs to slay, if and I'm talking about in like these medieval fanciful king and queen, dragons that one needs to slay, are the ones that are inside of ourselves. And it really has nothing to do with the people in the world. Yeah, sure, things happen to people that should never happen. But when it comes down to the crux of it, it's about what's happening on the inside for you. And understanding your connection to love, the truth of that, your willingness to express that into life, beginning to purify those words of expression with other people, finding some way to bless all of it and not judge any of it, which can be wildly tricky, then allows us to have what the actual truth of a matter is. And that's how I find we can confidently be able to step into a new world and begin to build and begin to manifest from that level. But there's 6 steps before you get to new world, that if you just start at new world, it'll never happen. You'll keep stumbling and you'll keep blaming and you'll keep running away and feeling like you need to move or find another community or another relationship or whatever the thing is that isn't working, when in reality it's actually your process.
Right. So what are you said 6 steps? Is that a literal step-by-step process that you're referring to, or?
I am. Yeah, we practice this type of energy work here at Sunrise Ranch called attunement, where instead of working with the chakra system, we work with the organ system that creates the chakra system. And each of those endocrine glands has its own unique spirit.
Hmm.
So, as I said, there's love, truth, life, purification, blessing, single eye, and new world. And I've found that by putting different relationships or different situations or circumstances into that linear path, I'm able to accurately assess where I'm at with either a person or my finances or my health or a project and know, okay, what steps actually need to happen. And when there's actually conflict and not a new world where everything's going smooth, how far up do I need to go on this level of awareness to find out what part I need to actually be working on in order to get the results that I'm looking for.
Right. So how has your experience been with that process?
I think it saved my life.
Yeah.
To be honest, I was definitely a shoot from the hip kind of gal and then ask questions later. And I think while I did experience certain levels of success, I was never fully aware of the wake of carnage that was left behind me. And not understanding why certain things weren't working out. And by not having an understanding of it, I ended up creating many, many layers of isolation in my world so that I would keep myself safe on some level. And so by acknowledging that, being willing to take those walls off and then going through the different levels of awareness to see how, I mean, at the end of the day, the last thing that you can go up to is love. So if at the end of the day, everything in my life goes back to ultimate and universal love, I consider that a successful experience. And then knowing where that is and fully accepting that, you can then begin to start to weave and to braid things back into creation from a level of integrity and authenticity.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned love as kind of a foundation, right? Because we tend to think of it as this. A lot of people I find tend to think of it as this thing that you do or you share or you give. But rather, I've come to more of a different understanding lately that love is not something you can give, and it's not something you can do, and it's not something you can share. It's who you are. It's
Mm-hmm.
what you are. It's what we all are at its deepest essence. That, when we're not being what and who we are, then we're not expressing that love. But even though even that is a little nuanced, because yes, we are expressing that love, just a variation of it or a different vibration of it, right? Because if everything is love, and it means everything is love, not necessarily just pure bliss all the time as well. So it's really, I think it comes down to less, at least for me in my life, it's been less about becoming something and becoming somebody, which I used to, as I got onto a more spiritual path, it was like, oh, I need to be like Gandhi, I need to be like Buddha, I need to be like Jesus, I need to do these things, and it, very intense, meditating 8 hours a day, and writing and writing like crazy, and like just really, really intense, complete dissolving of ego, had no sense of self, walked around homeless on the streets for a month in total bliss, and this whole really transformational experience. And yet at the same time, transcending that and going, no, it's not about being somebody different or doing something different. It's about is dissolving those things, habits, beliefs, systems, ideas that I've taken on in my youth that are preventing me from being that pure essence that I was already born with, which I believe is true for all of us. I believe every one of us comes to this world born in purity, born with that pure connection essence to the divine. We add a bunch of garbage on top of that, and if we try to add something else on top of that, I need to add purity on top of all my garbage, it's not going to happen. It's a facade versus, okay, we need to compost all that garbage. We need to, transform it, and then let the purity, that inner essence, come out by itself. And for me, I found that to be a much more joyful path, without stress and worry about, all these things I think I'm not living up to and all that stuff. So anyway, it's just something that was coming through as you were sharing what you shared, because I think it's another perspective for people to look at.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought purity in. I was just in a discussion with some friends of mine before we had our meeting, and the spirit of purity came into our conversation, and how it can't really be achieved, that pure of heart feeling, unless you're willing to get rid of the numbness in your life. And I've in thinking about that in this conversation, I feel like people's at times their initial need to want to be self-reliant can come from that state of numbness rather than from that place of purity. And I think that sometimes can lead to a lot of the world issues that we have in our current world models to look at. And I was thinking about some really vulnerable aspects of myself that that really started to shape my numbness as a young adult, and the deep longing to want to actually feel something again can come from a rather bizarre place if you've built up layer after layer after layer of numbness and all this trash that you started to talk about. And so, an invitation that I'm beginning to work with more in actually being able to describe how I went from that numb teenager into like the complete willingness that I experience in every breath that I take to achieve these euphoric, sparkly, magical experiences because of that deeper level of dedication comes from that delayering of oneself. Like, why do you really want to be self-reliant? I think is a really important question to ask.
Right.
Do you want to be self-reliant because you feel so hurt and betrayed by the system? Is it because something has happened in your life experience where you just want to go on a mountain and haul water and be by yourself, and that would be the experience that you want to consider successful? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if it's coming from a place of a distorted pattern, I think it's a consideration to look at to see what one's true motives are in this journey of self-reliance and self-empowerment. I think is another level of that. And from those levels of self-empowerment and self-reliance, what can actually be achieved for not just you, because I don't think you just came on the world just for you to have a happy, small little life. I think that everyone came onto this planet to have some sort of experience, learn what they needed to learn, and then begin to share what they needed to share. And I think that's why people like Gandhi and Buddha and other spiritual figures or even social impact leaders have such a powerful impression on us, because they were willing to experience a teaching, not just give a teaching, but they were willing to experience a teaching. They're willing to experience the releasing of that numbness that's inside of themselves, that wanted to say, fuck the system, because that's what Buddha actually did. He was in that whole, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to give away all my possessions. I'm not going to be a prince. I'm going to be this other thing. And I think that happened time and time again when people, which we all are, that same spirit inside of us. And I think that's why we admire them, because we see them inside of ourselves. So what part of you is that Buddha, is that Gandhi, is that Cesar Chavez, is that Martin Luther King, is that fill in the blank of that awesome person who totally inspires you, that you want to bring into the world? Because it's not their message, it's a spirit of their message that lies deep inside of you, that you have the complete ability to teach and bring forth into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. As I asked myself that question, which I think is a great question to ask ourselves, is yeah, why do we really want to be self-reliant? And I look at the first spark for me, was out of fear, recognizing all the systems. I mean, I recognized this 5 years ago. All the systems
Mhm.
were ready to like starting on the path towards collapse, and so I said, okay, that's not good. We've lost this ability to provide for ourselves our basic needs, and what happens in a civilization when those basic needs are no longer provided, and you don't provide them for yourself? Massive suffering, massive
Mhm.
chaos, massive death, loss, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I got into it first out of that, and what's interesting, and this may be true for a lot of people, it's certainly true for me, as is the more that I got closer to start growing my own food and visiting communities and, getting to know my own community and, being very close to the land. It's like the fear of that kind of has gone away and is replaced with this love for the planet and this love
Yeah.
for people and this love for animals and this love for the plants that nourish my body and this love for the sun and the moon and the water and the wind and the rain and everything. Just this absolute, never-ending love for nature, for life. I mean, I came across a rattlesnake running 2 miles into the mountains 2 days ago, and it was only a few feet away from me. It's coiled up, and I ran right by it, and it was shaking its tail. And I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I probably would have been scared shitless. But I walked right up to it and was totally cool with it, and it stopped rattling, and it was cool with me, and we were talking with each other and hanging out and having a good time. And I was like, you're badass, dude. I was like, this is a great, you're an awesome snake, where it's even having love for the things that are most poisonous, most people are deadly afraid of. And if they had a shotgun, they would have shot it for no reason other than fear. It's like transcending that fear. Fear is a great motivator. I mean, we need fear. Fear will save your life. If you're falling off the edge of a cliff, you better be damn afraid, because you'll do some miracle magic to grab the edge and save yourself. And it's been proven again and again. But only in those little drastic moments do we really need fear for, life preservation. Other than that, if it's directing our day-to-day life choices, then we're not going to have that kind of inner, pure, blissful experience as an ongoing basis, because we're going to take action out of that fear space, and we know that that energy is not nearly as strong and powerful as love. And that's, now they're scientifically validating that, which is interesting, that our ancestors have known that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Love is the most powerful energy, in the universe. And science is saying, yes, it is. And actually, we can prove it coming from the heart and all that, which is pretty cool. But anyway, to end to that point, I think that is such a really important understanding within ourselves, is that ability to want to be self-reliant, live within a community, create a new environment, not because it's the end of the world, but because of the joy and the happiness and the bliss and the love that it brings our lives and our neighbors and our communities. Now it's just yeah, I don't want to destroy the planet. I love the planet. Cool. What can I do to stop destroying the planet and live in harmony with it? It's like this living being. Why would I want to destroy it? So taking those actions and recognizing, as this whole conversation has been about, that inner part of ourselves, recognizing that, honoring that, and cultivating that peace, that wisdom, that love within, and then taking action out. I mean, that's such a great point of self-reliance, right? Being self-reliant inside first, and then being self-reliant outside.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it comes down to self-trust and knowing that in your environment, in the world that you're creating, in your direct sphere of influence, you completely trust because it's part of your creation, and anything that you are aware of, you're not fighting against any of it, but you keep on bringing your inner radiance, your inner sun, out into the world, out into the world, out into the world, so that your rays of love can be felt on grand, wide scales. I think that the HeartMath Institute says something that that your heart vibration is, I don't know, 3 to 11 feet away from you in a measurable scale.
Right.
But I believe that there are metaphysical measurable scales available that we just don't have the science to measure. How far our love vibration actually gets penetrated into the earth. And by having that shift in awareness and understanding of looking at all the global issues, for me, it radically changes it from a revolutionary standpoint to an evolutionary standpoint, where there's no winner or loser as you would in a revolution, but everyone's continuously evolving
Right.
into that new awareness and that new vibration. And from an atomic level, our atoms are immortal. They've been here since the beginning of time and will be here long before our bodies are gone. And I believe that they hold a high level of intelligence of what's happening in our inner realms. And so, whatever happens to our bodies after we decompose, our vibration that we put into those cellular structures, I believe will still be there. So, what are you going to do with that? What are you really going to do with that? And in business, I'm wonderfully grateful for the level of experience that I have in my business realm. And one of the things that I find so important about the type of business that I do is knowing how to always hold the vibration of true alignment into the causes that I'm doing, when I'm raising funds, when I'm building relationships, when I'm inviting someone into a space, to hold those high levels of transparency that I'm working with those other people, because I can feel it. When there's a tiny tinge where I'm like, ooh, I probably shouldn't have, oh, that was, I really did say that one day to that one person, and I really probably shouldn't have. And I work for a church. So I can't imagine how our friends across the world that are doing other types of business, all my work is philanthropic and humanitarian, and I still feel when when my work isn't all that it could be because of some egoic state that I may find myself in.
Hmm.
But to keep on having those very clear checkpoints within myself so that I can truly trust the process and the people that I work with can truly trust the process with me, that we're doing something together and not one person doing something to another person, but it's actually a very solid foundation to begin to do one's work and the work into.
Right. No, this has been a fascinating conversation, and super grateful to have had it with you and all of our viewers tuning in and joining us. I want to share a couple of websites, how folks can get in touch with you and the wonderful work you do. Obviously, you're on Facebook, Rachel Morrison. We'll put a link below this video. You can connect with her there. I know you do consulting work, you do collaborative work, you work with organizations, corporations, leaders, individuals. So people that want to get in touch with you, Facebook is a great way, yes. Also,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
sunriseranch.org. We'll put that website below. Fascinating place, a wonderful community. Excited to go back up there. I know you do lots of events. There's a Sister Winds event. I'm going to be up there hanging out, speaking at. I know you've got a Rise Music Festival coming up. Super excited to be at that as well. So check out Sunrise Ranch. Check out a Rise Music Festival. Check out all the stuff they're doing there. Again, we'll put the link below the video. There is an upgrade option here on the summit. If you missed any of the interviews, you want to own all of these interviews, there should be an upgrade button somewhere on the page. Check that out, and you can own all of this for lifetime access. And finally, I want to invite you to come out to Unify Fest. Rachel's going to be there with us. She's on our production team, bringing her skills and wisdom and some amazing people to come and help create this 4-day transformational festival. It's truly a paradigm-shifting event. It's a next-level festival experience with the underlying foundation of ceremony and multicultural spiritual experiences. On top of that, an epic music festival, a yoga festival, an art gathering, art installations, children's village, healing sanctuary, workshops, presentations. Rachel is actually giving a keynote presentation at Unify Fest, so you can join her there as well. So check that out. We'll put a link below, unifyfest.com. Other than that, Rachel, hey, look, it's been wonderful. I appreciate you so much. Really appreciate you for being here and sharing all your love and passion.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll talk to you next time on the Self-Reliance Summit. Take care.